there's no Vinny, it's me. Hi, welcome to episode 43 of The Unusual Suspects. My name is Rob Gargiulo. I'll be your host this evening. Thank you for joining us. We have a great crew of unusual suspects joining us tonight as well. And we have a new unusual suspect that we'll introduce in just a minute. But first, let's go around and introduce everybody that's joining today's podcast. We'll start to my right. He is one half of the VT.com writing duo Schneider. This is Shane Devine. Say hello to everybody at home, Shane.
Hello, everybody at home.
And to his right, we have what could possibly be the tightest shirt in all. Did you paint your skin black?
It's black paint, yeah.
Okay, that's what it looks like. Brandon in black body today, joining us as well from VT. Not .com, but Valuetainment. What is your title at Valuetainment.com?
Research, content, a little bit of stuff like that.
You sound very
talent as
unsure.
well.
Okay, talent, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
That's what's written in the email. A little bit of this.
Speaking of a little bit of
Don't want to
this, a
pigeonhole
little bit of that,
myself.
here's a whole lot of Humberto joining us to our left. He is, what is your title? You are the dictator of distribution?
Distribution Supreme Leader.
Okay, sorry. That was how
Rocking
silly
the
of
Pit
me.
Vipers again. Good to
I
see
know. The chat spoke, and they're like, "You need the glasses on," and that's what it is.
They're
I live for the
iconic
chat.
now.
I love you guys. I'm here in the chat.
And to Humberto's right, we have the other half of Schneider, a writer at VT.com. This is Connor Walcott. In fact, we're going to cover one of Connor's articles today on the program.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Thank you to our production crew in the back. We've got Kelly on the computer. We've got Andres on the audio. And all the way in the back, we've got Jeremy running video. So thank you for joining us. And if you haven't already, Jeremy, if you could pull up that like and subscribe button, let's tell everybody to like and subscribe. We are at 30,000 strong. And if you have not done so already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like today's podcast, and jump in the chat and talk with Humberto. Now, today's new unusual suspect. He is the vice president of free speech at the Media Research Center. You can find everything, and we'll introduce him and bring him on in just a minute, but you can find everything Media Research Center related at mrc.org or freespeechamerica.org. Wow. It must be that I had some kind of unforced medical or forced medical procedure. I'm having what is it called?
The cookie.
The cookie
shot.
Right. Yeah, I got the cookie shot. No, I'm sorry. mrcfreespeechamerica.org. Dan Schneider will be joining us in just a minute. You can follow him on X at Schneider_DC. And he is going to be talking about big tech, election interference, and election integrity. So we're going to speak with Dan in just a minute. A bunch of great topics that we're going to run through today. Humberto is going to be covering sex robots.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, wow. Sex appeal. Connor will be covering Black Lives Matter suing a George Soros affiliated, what is it, company? Network?
A nonprofit.
A nonprofit.
They're now eating their own, and it is glorious.
And it's a nonprofit that currently has $33 million of Black Lives Matter donations tied up, correct?
Yeah, so they're fighting over money that neither one of them should have, but that's why it's entertaining.
Shane will be covering FBI disinformation.
Yes, they're restarting their talks with social media companies ahead of the election. Convenient timing. I feel like this will do well with Mr. Schneider's segment.
Cool, because I thought Facebook was going to limit the amount of political news and content on Facebook. That's what they announced a few months ago.
Yes, but this is on the back end. So this will be their private talks with the federal government about what they should and shouldn't suppress. Not what is allowed to be put on their platform.
How about nothing? Shouldn't that be the answer? Suppress nothing. Well, and finally, we have Brandon, who's going to be covering Wall Street versus DC. And my topic, which we'll get to in just a moment, is going to be Epstein Part 2, the sequel. A second Jeffrey Epstein black book is going up for auction, and we'll give you details on when it's going to go up for auction and how you could possibly purchase it, if you could possibly purchase it. But first, let's welcome our guest today. Again, he is the vice president of free speech at the Media Research Center. For all things Media Research Center, go to mrc.org or mrcfreespeechamerica.org. You can follow him on X at Schneider_DC. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, our new unusual suspect. This is Dan Schneider. Dan, welcome to the program today.
Hey, thanks, Rob. And Humberto, better be careful. If you type in our URL incorrectly, you do end up with at some sort of a sex a sex site with Stormy Daniels. And
Looking
others.
forward to it.
That is mrcfreespeechamerica.org. Be careful how you type.
MRCFreeSpeechAmerica.org does not take you to the sex robot website, so go to that. Did I skip Minect? We'll do Minect in a little bit. I'm sorry, Kelly. We'll do Minect after Dan. Dan, so if you could give us a little bit of background information. We've actually had from the Media Research Center, Brent Bozell joined Patrick Bet-David on the PBD podcast. It was episode 398. If you have not seen it, you should go and watch it. It's actually a quick watch. It's about an hour, but we get into how Facebook has interfered in U.S. elections in the past and how we could possibly prevent that from happening in the future. But Dan, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do for the Media Research Center.
Well, I used to be a lawyer, used to practice law, and I thought that I was leaving the cesspool of law to move to D.C. and work here. Of course, I've just discovered I'm working in a different swamp. But I'm a lawyer. I've been working on free speech issues for quite a while. So I joined MRC about a year and a half ago. My primary fight is against big tech censorship. But the censorship of speech is ubiquitous, and it's un-American. I'm sure I agree with every one of your panelists today that what is needed is more speech, not less, if we're going to have a healthy, vibrant democracy.
Now, we've all been aware of censorship when it comes to big tech regarding Twitter, because after Elon Musk purchased Twitter and turned it into X, there were the Twitter files. But what other big tech companies have been involved in suppressing information regarding elections, suppressing free speech, or outright election interference?
Well, the short answer is every single one of them, except for Parler. But of course, these big tech platforms teamed up to take down Parler as well, including Google and Amazon. But every one of these big tech platforms is run by liberals, and they're staffed by liberals at the highest levels. And these people have the idea that any time that we disagree with them, that is then disinformation or misinformation or malinformation and harmful to what they think of as democracy. So we have to be silenced. And of course, the opposite is true. We're going to have a healthy, vibrant economy, a healthy, vibrant society. We have to have disagreement and be able to express our opinions. So but the biggest offender of all, frankly, is Google. Google, it's not a platform like Facebook and Twitter where you have your own accounts. So people sometimes miss how Google is doing it. But my colleague Gabriela Perso first wrote a big piece on Google, but then the follow-up one is on Facebook, and Facebook is getting worse and worse and worse.
If you're just joining us, this is the Vice President of Free Speech from the Media Research Center, Dan Schneider. Dan, so when you say Google is the worst offender and Americans or people using Google don't even recognize how Google is influencing elections or suppressing free speech, could you give us some examples of how they're doing it?
Yeah. For about 3 months, we ran the same 2 sets of search queries, and we ran them before each one of the Republican presidential campaign debates, but then throughout that same time period, we would repeat these. 2 different searches, one for Democrat presidential campaign websites and the other for Republican presidential campaign websites. No surprise, when we did the search for Democrat presidential campaign websites, Joe Biden was the #1 search result. His campaign. Up in the top 5 was also Marianne Williamson. Curiously, Hillary Clinton's old campaign website and Bernie Sanders' old campaign website was also produced. But nowhere would Google ever produce RFK's website for 3 straight months. Joe Biden's biggest threat to renomination, RFK, Google would not give you his campaign website. But even more surprising, when you look for Republican presidential campaign websites, Google for 3 straight months would only give you 2 campaign websites. Marianne Williamson, again, of all people, a Democrat, the only other campaign website that Google would give you was, at the very bottom of search results, was a guy named Will Hurd, who never broke 1% in national polling. But Google would not give you Donald Trump's campaign website, not Ron DeSantis, not Vivek Ramaswamy, not any of the others. Only Marianne Williamson and Will Hurd.
Now, this isn't the first time that your company, the Media Research Center, has found Google interfering in the election process before. Can you give us some other examples of when they've interfered in elections?
Well, there's so many examples, and of course, Google either does not respond at all, or they dissemble in their response. But here's another example: in the 2022 midterm elections, we did similar results queries for Senate Republican candidates, or rather, Senate candidates, Republican or Democrat. And in 10 out of 12 times, Google completely buried the Republican for one of the swing districts, one of the swing Senate races. 10 out of 12 times, Google completely buried the Republican, but highlighted the Democrat. Now, we did alternative searches in Bing, DuckDuckGo, and Tusk. And all three of those search engines would produce fair results. Republican and Democrat campaign websites alike were in the top 5 typically of search results. Google stood alone in highlighting the Democrat, burying the Republican. And then, Rob, when Herschel Walker, you may recall, had a runoff in Georgia. So we got a little more sophisticated, and we did these searches at the precinct level. And this shows how sensitive Google is, how sinister it is. In the Democrat-leaning precincts, there was no bias. In the Republican-leaning precincts, no bias. But where the Democrat candidate needed to get the additional votes in those swing precincts, that's where Google again was biased. You couldn't find Herschel Walker's website if you lived in a swing precinct, but you could certainly find Warnock's website, the Democrat, and of course he ended up winning.
So Google has been in existence since September 4th, 1998. It was founded in Menlo Park, California. That means since Google's inception in 1998, there have been 7 presidential elections that have occurred here in the United States. Dan, in your opinion, or maybe through the research that you have done at the Media Research Center, how far back can you track Google actually interfering in U.S. elections?
That's really hard to tell because, our work is done in real time. But I've got a friend who was a very senior executive at Google, and she has told me that she saw the difference in 2015. Before 2015, back when Google's motto was "Don't be evil," she thought that her company was doing really good work, providing information to the public. And in 2015, she saw a huge swing at Google, and she started to express her concerns. And that's when Google completely went off the rails. But we've seen Google do other things even before 2015, maybe the precursor to when they just completely lost the thread of their logic. And now, of course, they use their resources specifically to turn elections in favor of the left.
This is Dan Schneider. He is the Vice President of Free Speech at the Media Research Center. For all things Media Research Center, mrc.org or mrcfreespeechamerica.org. VT's very own writer, sex icon, and symbol. Look at him. He also unbuttoned the top button.
He wants a favor. That's what he wants.
I do. But look, he's trying to match. He's trying to out-sex you, Dan. Dan also has the top button unbuttoned. And now look, Shane has stepped up his game and he has unbuttoned his shirt. And now he has a question for you, Dan. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for that introduction,
You're
Rob.
welcome.
So Dan, what can free speech advocates do to get around this? I mean, some people say to use DuckDuckGo. Should everyone be using X? Should everyone be using Truth Social? Should everyone be contacting their local congressman, asking them to do something specific? Like, what would you say are the best things that we can do to fight against this? Because obviously Google is extremely powerful. They have they're the size of small countries in terms of their GDP. What could we do to fight against this behemoth?
Yeah, well, there are very practical things people can do in their private lives, like if you have to use Google, and there are alternatives like Tusk. Tusk is the one true neutral search engine out there. The others that you mentioned, like DuckDuckGo, they're still run by the left, and DuckDuckGo claims that it will not track your searches and keep your data, but they actually don't claim not to be biased. But again, we did see that DuckDuckGo was much more fair to the Republican candidates in 2022. But if you have to use Google, don't bother with the first page of search results. Go to the second or third pages of search results if you actually want a balanced view. But there's also TUS to use. Other things, there are several state attorneys general who are doing really good work fighting against Google. One of those is right there in your home state of Florida. In Texas, Missouri, Louisiana, Utah, these AGs are taking on big tech and doing really fine work. The Secretary of State in West Virginia, Mac Warner, he's the first Secretary of State to start to really look into whether these big tech platforms are violating the law when they are using their resources specifically to influence elections. Those should be either in-kind contributions or independent expenditures, both of which are supposed to be reported, supposed to be filed with the Federal Election Commission or the state boards. And these big tech companies are in violation of the law one way or the other.
Humberto, I know you had a question for Dan.
Actually, Shane, that's a great segue to my question. Because, we used to go, because he said, just not go on the first page of results. But with the rise of AI, like people are not even combing through the results. So they go in there, they ask a question, they don't browse through the different results, and they just get an answer. So like these layers of complexity in algorithm, that is usually programmed by someone that leans, left probably, is getting more complicated. Do you think we're going to get, I'm sorry to be that guy, and I'm bringing the black pill here, do you think we're going to get to a point that machine learning and AI, it won't make, like, we won't have a chance against it when it comes to getting our information?
Yeah, Umberto, you raise a great point. Right after the October 6 attacks by Hamas on Israel, we did a study on Google's AI tool. Back then it is known as Bard. Today it's known as Gemini. But Google's AI platform would not tell us what the capital of Israel is. It would tell us what the capital of all of the four bordering nations are of Israel and the capital of any other country on the planet, but not Israel. It also would not tell us what Hamas is, even though it was happy to tell you what the Irish Republican Army is, Black Lives Matter, and I know Connor's going to get into BLM a little later. But Gemini would tell you what BLM is, but not Hamas. And then of course, a few weeks later, Gemini, your listeners will remember that Gemini, when people asked, well, show us a picture of the founding fathers, they would show a black George Washington, or show us a picture of a Nazi, and it would be,
remember that,
an Asian person in a German Nazi uniform.
And I have
Gemini was
they ran the study, and I saw it. Well, actually, I think it was 3 weeks ago. Some Google employees got into the office to protest inside the office, and they had to be taken away by police. It's terrible. On a second, like in a follow-up question, how much? Because I do this for a living, even though putting things on the internet. How much do you think is their business model, and how much do you think is actual ideological? Because like the business model for Google, YouTube, and everyone is to pay to show stuff, and hiding stuff is a good business model. I don't know.
Yeah, well, Google is just a giant cash machine. It has a near monopoly on search and other things. They're just raking in dough. But if you ask business professors around the country how efficient Google is, they'll tell you it's massively inefficient. They waste tons of money. It is not focused on profit maximization. It is focused on pursuing a radical left-wing agenda. You can tell by their own financial statements and their income statements and balance sheets. They waste so much money. And the only good news here, Umberto, is that Google is behind the AI game. Other AI platforms like ChatGPT and OpenAI, they are far ahead of Google in the AI system because Google is so badly run.
Well, this is Dan Schneider from the Media Research Center, mrc.org or mrcfreespeechamerica.org. You can also follow him on social, X specifically, at Schneider_DC. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back on the Unusual Suspects in the future.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob.
Take care, Dan. By the way, I forgot to do this in the beginning. Terrifying. when you hear what's going on with election interference,
yes,
and we're coming up and ramping up, because the problem is that a lot of Americans, and I've been guilty of it too, we've traded freedoms for ease of convenience. You know why people don't use DuckDuckGo? It's not as easy to use as Google. I never even knew Tusk existed.
Me neither.
So I'm walking away knowing that now there is a different search engine. Problem is, it's not marketed properly. Nobody knows about it. So everybody just uses what's easy, which is Google.
Like you said, they kind of suck too. Like anytime you use one of those weird ones like Bing or even Microsoft Outlook or whatever, like you always get weird stuff that comes up when you try to search something normal. You know, like you look up like a movie theater down the street in like a Bing search engine, nothing comes up.
Is Ask Jeeves still a thing?
Oh, I'm gonna
go old school. AskJeeves.net.
That's a deep cut.
Thank you to Dan for joining us. Let's plug Monect real quick. If you're not on Monect, get on it now. There's my QR code. Listen, you can connect with professionals from all walks of life. If you're looking for help in podcasting, production, social media distribution, or stand-up comedy, you can connect with me right there. I'm the fellow on the right, obviously. And take a look. Look, there's always people who are critics of things without trying them. Let me tell you why you want to connect on Monect. There are people that are coming to me with all kind of, like, I've got Karkith Nagapala, Francisco Marino, Alex Shaw, Garrett Schwab, RF Toramis, David Gonzalez, Ophelia Shomeki. These are all people that have connected with me in the past day. And if I went to my pending, I've got 7 pending right now, including one for my buddy Kyle Starr. So if you're not on Monect, get on Monect today. Everybody here is on Monect, right? We've got Humberto. Humberto is on Monect. So if you're like, hey, I need a good flannel jacket, where do I go? This is the guy to tell you. He knows everything about fashion.
I'm your guy.
Who else is also on Monect? Humberto. We've got look at that.
With a really old picture.
That is old, right?
Yes,
that's you. That's Schmug DC Shane.
This is my slightly more smug years.
I like you with the beard. You look a lot rugged, more rugged.
Thank you.
Speaking of rugged, Beefcake is also on Monect. So if you need any advice on weightlifting or tight shirts, or Kelly, she also wears tight clothing as well. You can connect with her.
But she looks good wearing them.
She does. Well, I think he looks good too.
I'm sorry.
Really accentuates the curves, Brandon.
Yes. And finally, Connor.
I am on Monect. There is a deep
anonymous.
state. There's a deep state conspiracy to keep you from finding out about it.
This is funny. Every episode, we should plug Connor's Monect and not have a QR code ready. That'd be the funniest.
Yeah. They don't want anybody contacting me because of what I might reveal about what really is going on behind the curtain.
That's a great advertising strategy.
But Shane and I are both on there. We are open to receiving any story advice people have. Like if you have story tips or stuff you want to see reported on VT.com.
If you know about some crazy shit going down and you want us to blast it to almost 1 million followers on Instagram on a headline, send it to us and we'll do so.
Very cool. Monect, right now the Monect League Championships underway. Your chance to win a night of dinner with Patrick Bet David and cigars here, right here at 5990, where we film in the Valuetainment Cigar Lounge. So go to Monect.com, go to your Google or Apple Play Store. Go to your, what was the website? Go to your Tusk
App Store.
Your Tusk App Store.
Have that.
And download the Monect app today and Monect. First up on today's Unusual Suspects from the usual people, Humberto is going to get into sex robots, something I'm very interested in and have never experienced myself. Caitlin, if you're watching, that's my wife's name.
Don't get too far into the sex robots, Humberto.
Humberto, tell us more about the sex robot craze. Is it a craze?
It's $1 billion industry.
Trillion.
$1 trillion industry.
Jumped in real quick.
What's
those trillions are some of your dollars.
What's bigger than a trillion? A gazillion-dollar industry. This, ladies and gentlemen, this was bound to happen. We saw this coming because humans. As soon as AI came by, some of them you could train an assistant, and people decided that as you do at work, not anymore. That's an HR violation. They train, their AIs to be companions. We're having a loneliness pandemic.
Yep.
And there's a very, very interesting article on the New York Post. And also here on State of the Union, that it's predicted because it might get to $1 trillion, but within the next year it might be $1 billion dollar-industry.
Okay.
Because we have all the moving parts, which is scary. Literally, we have all the moving parts. For the first time ever, we have the software that is AI based. We have the electronics to make it look real and move real. The guys at Tesla have been doing incredible work. The guys at Boston Dynamics, super scary. I'm going to show you a video on the latest video. And you need to have...
That's the hardware.
Yeah, that's the hardware. And you need to have a really strange fetish to be down with that robot because it's freaking scary.
Is that the robot dog that was shooting fire?
Oh, no, this is even worse.
Wait, there's something worse than robot dogs that shoot fire.
Kelly, just... this is the... Imagine you're in your house, you post a spicy meme, and they send this robot to your house. That's all I'm going to say.
It doesn't look so scary. Okay, never mind. Getting scareder. Whoa. Okay. I wish my wife could get in that position. I bet the sex robot can. No. Oh, they didn't like that joke, did it? Oh, that's exactly what my wife does. And she just stares.
Makes that face.
It's actually got a better personality, though. What? I love her. I'm kidding, Kelly.
And if you get the right model, we'll talk to you for once in a while. But if this wasn't creepy enough, so that's what's under the skin. This is not a joke. They've been researching like pleasurable skin for the last 20 years to get it as close as human skin as possible. You guys can laugh about this, but the porn sex industry has been one of the biggest drivers of technology in the last 30 years. For example, right here, you're watching us on YouTube.
Pile drivers of technology.
No, but the reason you're able to watch us, and I love you, Chad, I'm right here. Connect me, please. I'll put you in the comments. So one of the main drivers that led to streaming technology was the porn industry. Actually, the first streaming sites where you can watch videos online, they were actually porn sites.
They were created by Andrew Tate.
They were created by Andrew, allegedly.
He got in there like fifth, maybe.
I'm not going to say who created them.
I'm not going to say what kind of doctor. Anyway.
So as we're pushing technology forward,
okay,
AI is growing, it's getting smarter, more human, it intersects with this, guys, and I just want to show you this video. We might, just roll the tape.
Literally, nothing is off limits in terms of what you're talking about.
Trump.
You can talk about adult content and adult conversation, mature sexual subject matter that normally, obviously, Siri will be very evasive when you try to talk to her about that, which people do all the time.
I bet that guy's done it with the toys.
Definitely. Exactly what he would.
The odds of you being able to buy a non-used one from this guy.
AI. And I think that's what makes it fun.
Spiky hair.
Basically, the way the head works is we have 12
Kelly,
points of
could we contact them to have her in the podcast?
And so they're all kind of working together. You have your eyebrows, your eye blinks, eye side to side, neck up, down.
Well, the story of Tay.
Smile.
You know the story of Tay? I'll tell it later.
All right.
But
anyhow, you guys,
that's not as sexy.
You
like, it's weird.
You guys got the idea.
I prefer to call her Elaine.
You guys got the idea. There's a company out there called Real Dolls that they've been in this game for the past 15 years.
Okay.
And they take custom orders. You can have the doll any height, any color, any features, any sex or gender or whatever you're into, and they would deliver it to you.
Before you go on, okay. Does anybody think that's weird to have a sex doll?
Yes.
We'll get to the robots, but just an actual sex doll. You think you think it's weird as well?
Super weird.
Shane?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
How is it any different than a woman that uses the same type of sex toy? It's not a person, but how is that any different?
Well, I think there's a difference between pocket what versus a full-on doll, and that's the comparison that you're making.
So the entire body is what makes it weird for you.
I also think
like,
not the fact that they're making love to silicone or rubber.
Well, imagine you're at your
parts
friend's
are
house and
also
that just
weird.
falls out of the closet. Yeah, that's weird.
No, I've never been. Well, okay, imagine. Yeah, you know what? I bet if I went to Deli's house and I open up the closet, there's a bunch of used sex dolls in there.
Exactly.
It comes down to everything in modern Western society is shame. Like, if you have the money and you want to buy a sex doll and you're going to keep it in your closet, you know, blow off some steam, maybe throw it around and whatever you want to do with it, that's on you. Do it in the privacy of your home. It's cool. But if because don't look this up on YouTube. The documentary about guys that think they're real people and they take them to dates because it's really creepy. Don't do it. Oh. But it's out there. I didn't want to put it on.
You're telling me I'm having dinner with my family at Chili's and some guy comes in with a rubber sex doll and sits down next to me?
Yes.
So there's an ongoing trend of women who have rubber babies. And that's the thing. They just treat this. It looks like maybe like a 1-year-old infant. They keep it swaddled. They carry it around with them. And it's like a whole thing of like it's their real life doll that they pretend is a kid.
Mental illness.
Well, hold on. But yeah, I don't 100% disagree. But in some instances, there may be women who lost children late term.
That's kind of what it was created
at
for.
Birth. Yeah, so I can see that.
Now it's just an accessory.
Yeah, if it's a guy that's trying to breastfeed that rubber doll, that's a baby, then I have a problem.
So this comes down to shame. And to wrap this up nicely.
Yes, go ahead.
Because I didn't want to come here just to talk about sex, Robert. I think this is on women. This is on women. The feminism in general has done them a disfavor. Right now, with the laws that we have for divorce, the laws that we have, like how the media portrays men, and every they're guilty. I don't know if you guys saw the trend a few weeks ago or last week about men versus bear. They'd rather be alone in a forest with a bear. So that's what happens. And women are over. Once this takes flight, like I don't think this is coming back from it.
Okay,
but I love my wife. You're the best.
After millions of years of evolution, sex dolls is what's going to put women out of business.
Not dolls.
That's true. Okay.
As someone who's
silly of me.
As someone who's married to a real woman, they're still pretty great. The robots can't compete, but
the women. Thank you for the plug.
They're for sure going to try, and that's the problem.
Okay, Rob.
Next
what do we
topic.
got?
Connor's
how do you rebound
keep sitting
from
here
this?
and simping for women, so we'll just move on.
White Knight.
All right. Well, next up, Jeffrey Epstein, the sequel. I am very excited to discuss this. A second black book belonging to the murdered or I guess suicided pedophile.
We're still alive.
Look at that. Wow, it's so smug and arrogant. Kind of oddly sexy. Like a weird, I know, gross.
Just dashing.
It is a dashing
in his
pedophile.
evilness.
A second
Handsome devil.
He is. What does Vinny often call people? Like the personification of evil? Yeah, demons. Okay,
Demon.
definitely demon. A second black book, reportedly belonging to Jeffrey Epstein, may go up for auction this week. There is a great write-up at VT.com by Connor Walcott, one half of the Schauner team. Schauner gives me a bonner when I read their article. VT.com. The article's title is Jeffrey Epstein's second black book for sale at secret auction contains 200 plus redacted names. Now, according to this article written by the guy that's here, so I'm excited to talk to him about it, the second little black book, which did you guys know that there was a second black book that belonged to Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, before you wrote the article, did you know?
No, that's why it was such a shocker to see that headline of this book nobody knew about is all of a sudden up for sale. It's not evidence. It's not locked away somewhere. It's just open for grabs later this week.
So how do we know it's not a forgery and they're going to indict people who don't deserve it?
Well, the actual
Trump is in it.
He was, according to this article, well, I guess according to Connor, Trump was in one of Jeffrey Epstein's black books. So there's two. The first one became the property of the government in when? 2004? No. 2019, that book became a property of the U.S. government. But the second black book, that book, the first one, contained 221 names. Some of the names included in that black book, reportedly, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Michael Bloomberg, Prince Andrew, and Mick Jagger. Odd combination.
Wow.
Right? World leader, now world leader, financial leader, a world leader, rock star?
That should be a band.
Well, so that first book became the property of the U.S. government after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. However, this second black book dates back to 1997, where it was found in the streets by musician Denise Ondeko, who found it on the sidewalk in New York City's East Village. She held on to that book until 2020. This is after Jeffrey Epstein had been convicted. He was then released, then sentenced, or actually he was held and was going to go on trial and then died. When did Jeffrey Epstein die?
2019.
So this woman held on to the book, knew Jeffrey Epstein died, and then sells it in 2020. How much do you think that this woman sold Jeffrey Epstein's second black book, reportedly containing between 300 and 400 names of associates? How much do you think she sold that book for in 2020?
$1 million.
Stupid.
$1 million. Something stupid. That's not a number, but okay.
4 digits.
4 digits. Okay.
I wrote the article, so I know the answer.
Okay, that's true.
100K.
100K. All of you except Connor wrong. She ended up selling it for $400.
Oh my!
On eBay.
Nothing.
She just
What
sold
a
it to some
bargain.
guy on eBay.
Chris
That's weird.
Hilali bought the book for $450. He then, go ahead, Connor, can you take it from here? Because I know that he shops the book around, right? He ends up contacting a bunch of different news organizations and saying this book exists before he then what? He turns it over to an auction house,
Yeah,
and it's set to go to auction this week.
He tried to send it to an auction house, and the first one, I forget the name of it. It's a very famous auction house. They weren't interested.
Sotheby's. I don't know.
It might have been.
Okay.
Or something to that effect.
Alexander Historical Auctions?
That's the one that picked it up.
Okay.
Because this guy who does like rare antiques collecting and true crime stuff got a hold of the guy's contact information and pitched the idea to him of, okay, we'll bring it to this group. This other auction house, Alexander, also sold like Napoleon's pocket watch and some stuff related to Hitler. You know, they deal in more eclectic items that most other places don't want to sell. So it goes up, I think, on Wednesday. I believe I have the date written down in the article.
But according to you, this is not an auction that anybody can participate in. Because you got to think, if the book was sold for $450 in 2020, I mean, sure, maybe it appreciates in value. You could probably bet on that for, what, $600? But it's a closed auction.
Yeah, it's a private auction. So we're looking into some of the details here because I don't really know how exactly to get involved. If there is a way for the public to be open, I think every single one of us should be in there trying to get it.
Hell yeah.
I think what it means is the names of the people participating are not disclosed and the amounts they bid are not disclosed. Everybody submits sealed bids. I think it will run through the end of next month. And then at the end of that, they'll open the bids and whoever bid the most gets it. So it's not like the active bidding of, people increasing their bets back and forth.
I got an idea. All right, Kelly, can you pull up my Connect QR code, please? If you're interested, I will donate from this moment on. Anybody that wants to connect with me on Connect, whatever way you want to do it, I will create a fund. There's my Connect code right there. If you want to be in, we'll bid on this together. Connect with me. Say that this is for the Jeffrey Epstein book. I will separate, because you can separate the funds. I will put every dime that is connected with me through Connect towards a fund where we can then try and purchase and bet on Jeffrey Epstein's black book. So when are the actual bids due? If it goes up for auction Wednesday and you say it goes through the end of the month, so do we have until the end of the month to raise money for this?
It seems that way. I think...
swear on the life of both of my children. I swear to God, look at me. I swear on the lives of my 2 children and my dog, which I love arguably almost as much as my wife, Oliver. I love him to death. I cuddle with him all the time. I swear on all of their lives. You connect with me and you say it's for the Epstein fund so that we can purchase Jeffrey Epstein's second black book. I'll put that money aside. If we don't get it, can I refund it? We'll figure something out. There will be a backup plan. I didn't even take your money or run. This isn't some kind of shiesty thing that I thought of. I just thought of it now. I didn't think of a backup plan.
That was so great. Rabin told that.
Get some radio production advice.
You know who's gonna get that money? The feds. Because this is a PSYOP. It's 100% a PSYOP. I see a PSYOP and I call a PSYOP. Like, come on.
Call a spade a spade.
Hey, listen to me. A new book just appears. A new book.
I know,
book
right?
Number 2.
It's like when the Mormons found like the third part of the Bible or whatever. Like, hey, new Bible just dropped.
This has Mormon
in my backyard.
Mormon
The golden
vibes
plates
all
and the
over it.
hat.
Sorry to any Mormons out there. It's just a
drip,
kind of suspicious premise story. All right.
Question. Okay, and we're going to wrap up on this. All right, so we can't get in because it is a Fed-owned whatever. Or it's closed to the public. Or we don't have enough money to compete with the elites that want to keep their names out of that, which is probably what this will end up being. So don't connect with me. That was a bad idea. We can't compete with billionaire pedophiles.
Someone just sent you $1 billion.
I'm not in that league. But
Someone just sent you $1 million, and now they're not going to.
The owner of the auction house said, we're not going to disclose the name of who buys it, and whoever gets it can do whatever they want with it. I don't care if they burn it. I don't care if they shoot it into space. I don't care if they freeze it and break it into 1 million pieces. That's their prerogative now.
Imagine we get to do a live reading of it on Usual Suspects.
So that shouldn't that become property of the government if they're investigated? I mean, I would think that would be evidence that could be used in the case against Ghislaine Maxwell, but okay, fine, whatever. I'm wondering if why not just go to the guy that has the book now and ask him whose names are in there, or the musician that found it? Why is no one contacting either one of those? Tony the booker, you got to contact these people. That's going to be your gig, buddy. Yeah. Find out what name, because if you had this book, wouldn't you look in and see what names are in there?
Yes,
so we need Secret Service protection for Denise Adenakia and Chris Halila, the only 2 people that have seen this. But okay, that's enough of me yelling about Jeffrey Epstein. We'll never get justice
for today, anyway.
Yes, for today. Let's move on to the other half of the Schauner duo. Connor, thank you so much for the great article, VT.com. Go read more about Jeffrey Epstein's second black book.
Absolutely.
But now over to Shane, the other half of Schauner. Shane, tell us about FBI misinformation.
Yeah, so I wrote an article last week about this. It's on VT.com about the FBI, CISA, and other federal agencies beginning to talk again to social media companies about disinformation ahead of the November election. Kelly, if you could just pull up my article thumbnail. So what we have here is a report from nextgov.com who attended a conference that Senator Mark Warner attended. He is the chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He's a Democrat. In the Senate, he said that the Biden administration has been too timid to engage with social media companies over the last 6 months. Those are his words. And what does he mean by engage? What he means is previously during the 2020 election and during the COVID pandemic, the Biden administration directly talked to social media companies, Google, and other platforms to tell them what should and should not be allowed on the internet in the name of misinformation and disinformation. As we know, famously, the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed. That was in no small part because of communications between the Democrat camp and the deep state and Google. And then there was also reports from Jim Jordan.
So hold on quickly on that, just on that specific instance. So in addition to big tech censorship of the actual story, then there was also the New York Post publishing the names of 51 intelligence officers who said that was Russian disinformation. Right. So they were hitting it on both fronts. They're suppressing the story while also creating disinformation that they're then putting out into the public sphere.
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, so so you have, I mean, that's basically, as BizDoc says, you could fit a thin piece of paper between big tech and the government at this point. It's the same thing. So
it's a good BizDoc impersonation.
Yeah.
Stats.
Gosh damn it. So Rep. Jim Jordan, in his capacity as the select subcommittee on the chair of the select subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government, put out a 100-page report in November about how the federal government had suppressed conservative voices in the 2020 election. It's very detailed. It explains how they directly asked Twitter. It's part of the Twitter files to, get certain tweets offline. And then Jordan followed that up with a second report confirming that the Biden White House had directly told YouTube supporters to suppress disinformation about the cookie vaccine. As we said before, we can't say that. So it was also discovered in March that the federal government has gone so far as to demand the IP addresses and identities of users that watch specific videos on YouTube. And then a March report from none other than the Media Research Center, who we just had on, found that Google had interfered at least 41 times since 2008 in American elections. And now Mark Warner is saying that as the Supreme Court case Murphy versus Mississippi wraps up, so basically that case was filed by the Attorney General of Missouri, Eric Schmidt, alleging that the Biden administration violated the First Amendment by engaging with social media companies in this way. But it's looking like the Supreme Court is going to err on the side of the government. So now the Biden White House is getting more confident again, and they're sending their FBI and the Cybersecurity or Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, to now begin talks again with social media companies just in time, because the 2024 election is underway.
How many organizations are there within the federal government that we're not aware of? Has anybody? I've never heard of CISA before.
There are 17 intelligence agencies. It's part of
CISA count as an intelligence agency?
Yeah. So the intelligence community, it's called. That's its official name, IC. That includes the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, as well as all of the intelligence agencies that are part of the military branches, as well as CISA, Department of Homeland Security, and several others.
So when they say the deep state and the intelligence agencies, it's not just FBI, it's not just CIA, it's CISA and the other 14 other intelligence agencies in that community.
Yeah.
Lifers there. And people have been there for 40 years.
So now when you go, okay, well, why didn't Trump just drain the swamp the first time? Think about that. 17 intelligence agencies.
It's colossal.
That you'd have to dismantle and either do what Javier Milei did in Argentina, where he just started slashing different government programs and different organizations. How do you restructure 17 in 4 years?
The worst thing too is that if you fire them, you have to get the Senate's approval to replace them with somebody new. So like the Senate's part of the swamp too. So if you get rid of somebody, you have to have the swamp approve your next pick.
Yeah, and like all these agencies too, like once they're created, they embed them so deep in the structure of the government that they can say, oh, well, if you get rid of the whole agency, like wholesale, well, then we're left vulnerable on this vector of attack from China on cybersecurity. And I bet they also, like, they pass all these agencies through acts in the Senate, like, originally. So in order to completely ban them, you'd have to go back and pass new acts to underfund them or just delete them from existence. And, it's like once it's made, it's so difficult to undo that you basically have to wait till the end of this cycle, whatever that is, before they all disappear.
And in the meantime, they'll have 7 ways from Sunday to take you down if you try to go after them.
And that was
established.
Bragged about. He bragged. Chuck Schumer bragged about that on Meet the Press, that the intelligence agencies, when you go up against them, there's 7 ways from Sunday that they can bring you down. That's crazy
terrified
to me.
from terrified.
But how many more? And I hate to be like, I know when Vinny says how many more times, and I get it. How many more things have to be put in front of you that we're told were conspiracy theories or taboo that then are presented, and they're not only presented as truth but acknowledged, and then they use that and brag about it in front of you. And then when you still go, there's a deep state, people go, conspiracy theory, wear a tinfoil hat. Bet you didn't think we landed on the moon. Do we live on a flat earth? Are birds not real? Was 9/11 an inside job? Yes, it was. Does the Loch Ness Monster exist? No, it doesn't. How about Bigfoot? You believe in that too? Like, that's at 5G. It causes butt cancer. Like, there's all those weird things that you get. But look, every time that we go, hey, there's this weird thing going on, then they come out and they say it on the news and brag about it and use it as a threat to intimidate.
The problem is that they could say they stopped thousands of terrorist attacks over the last 10 or 20 years, but that's all classified. It's a matter of national security did not disclose how many they've actually stopped. So it could be 0 or it could be 10,000.
So they take away your freedoms to justify protecting you, but then they're not telling you what they're protecting you from, the amount of protection they're giving you, but they use that unknown information to justify continuing to take away your freedom.
They work with people who are like criminals or /terrorists. If they, like they capture a really good hacker, they'll make him work for the CIA. So I guarantee if you got rid of one of those programs, like you'd suddenly have a giant, crazy either cyber attack, terrorist attack, and they'll be like, oh, see, that's why you needed us, and then the public will want them back.
And add on top they don't know what each other is doing, because
CIA, FBI.
Yeah, they don't know what there's strong competition.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good point, because really the only way out of this mess is if we confuse the hell out of them. And there's like Humberto, we've talked before about Deleuze and Guattari. There's left-wing theorists who have ideas about how to circumvent authoritarianism without creating another authoritarianism thing to go up against it. You basically confuse the hell out of them and scramble them by putting out so many false signals that it just overwhelms, and they can't even figure anything out because they can't figure out what's really going to happen or what's a lie. So the counterinsurgency doesn't happen in the form of actually draining the swamp. It's going to happen in the form of things getting so crazy and them having so much information to go through that they won't even have time to do it. And there's going to be so many of them all trying to bust the same person, they're going to end up like shooting themselves.
And that's happening to the public right now. Like, there's so much news and information that people don't even get outraged about the most outrageous things possible. Mm-hmm. So like, instead of censorship, it's information overload.
Connor, I'll give you the last thought.
Yeah, it's like that video from a few years back of an ATF guy shows up at a dude's doorstep and is harassing him about some gun he has, and the guy calls the local cops on the ATF agent, and that video ends with the ATF guy going to jail for resisting the cops who showed up. That's how you get around it. None of these people are at all coordinated, and based on everything we know about how they communicate between departments, it's all old school analog stuff they've never bothered to update. So it's possible to confuse them and get around them that way, but they're a problem in the meantime.
Right.
Well, today's podcast has been very depressing and uplifting. I got excited for the future with sex robots, and now I'm depressed because of big tech.
It's an emotional roller coaster.
Can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
The Lord giveth,
yin and yang.
take their way.
Yeah, great, wonderful. Let's talk about giving and taking away, specifically your donations being taken away, robbed from you if you ever donated to the Black Lives Matter movement. Turns out $33 million that was donated to Black Lives Matter has not even actually gone to making Black lives better. It actually has gone to a George Soros-funded agency, team?
First of all, let's
what is it?
It's a nonprofit philanthropy.
No one could get philanthropic effort out.
Yeah, but let's be honest here. Even the money that didn't get taken by this group, if you donated to BLM, you got your money taken from you. Like you didn't do any good with it.
I'm sure my wife did, but didn't admit to it. Like if I corner her, I'm like, "Did you give money to BLM?" I bet she'd be like, "No," but I think she probably did. I think a lot of females. It was a very look. You looked at the George Floyd, the death of George Floyd, and it's not just George Floyd. It wasn't just George Floyd. It was Tamir Rice in Cleveland. It was Trayvon Martin here in Florida. They use these stories to tug on the heartstrings, and unfortunately, females are more emotional than men, and they make emotional decisions. So, in my household, I can say I never donated a dime to Black Lives Matter. Does that make me racist? No. I realized what it was very early on. My wife, not as well read and much more emotional, so I could see how more females donated.
Well, there was this whole story that came out way back, I think, in like 2021, of how BLM had all its donations go through Act Blue Charities, which is this giant Democratic fundraising group that would take all the donations. Some of it would go back to BLM chapters. Most of it went to the Biden and Sanders campaigns that year.
Nice.
Because that's how Democrats raise a lot of their money. It's through these activist groups that say, oh, the best way to help black lives is to elect Democrats, so we're just going to give the money that way. But the key players in the story we're talking about today, the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, it's a group not a lot of people know about because it hides under BLM. Like they are the group that owns the Black Lives Matter domain name. They claim to speak for the movement. They're not the only movement, but they are the ones who put themselves forward as running the whole thing. It was founded by these three women that will throw up this picture. You're probably familiar with them if you've done any sort of research into BLM.
I know the middle one.
Licia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi. They founded the whole thing in 2017. They kind of got the ball rolling on the whole Black Lives Matter under that banner. So now they claim to be in charge of the whole thing. All three of them have since left. Patrice Cullors is the one who was accused of taking funds to buy herself 3 mansions in Los Angeles and Atlanta.
Didn't her brother also do work on behalf of Black Lives Matter and got paid like 8 times the amount of what the normal pay would be for the position?
So, like I said, the entire BLM donation thing was a scam from the top down. But the other key group here that we're talking about is the Tide Center. That is a giant umbrella group of Democratic and left-leaning nonprofits. The Tide Center was started by a guy named Drummond Pike in 1976. He was activist.
Him, right?
Yes, I believe we do. The Tide Center, they market themselves as a force for social good. Tide Center, Tides Foundation, Tides Nexus. It's all one thing.
Okay.
This is
founded by this guy named Drummond Pike right here. Who?
So this is the face of Black Lives Matter.
Essentially.
Some creepy guy in some nonprofit in DC pocketing millions of dollars.
All right.
So the way that whole thing works is that it's a nonprofit umbrella group. So basically, any activist group that isn't tax exempt will go to the Tide Center and say, "Hey, will you hold all our money and like kind of run that side of things for us, so we can avoid paying taxes and avoid being looked at by the IRS?" They do that for a lot of groups. BLM, way back when, they partnered in 2020 when they got like $90 million in donations after George Floyd. But the other thing that makes Tide Center so significant is that they are directly in the pipeline from George Soros. We have a graphic that we can pull up here. You might have seen this floating around Valuetainment the last couple weeks.
Yes, it's on. I believe there is a diagram drawn of this on a whiteboard.
Yes,
as soon as you walk into the building. So it's welcome to Valuetainment. Here's how George Soros and the deep state is trying to undermine American values.
I went on Saucecast a few weeks ago to explain this.
Debut.
Debut on Saucecast.
George Soros' body count. Millions, apparently.
Millions.
Not enough is the answer.
Patrick has a whole video explaining this, and then Shane and I went over this on the new Unusual Suspects
Can you
spin-off
pull that
show,
back up,
The Drink Tank.
Jeremy?
Yeah, keep this pin
Also,
here because
I
I
don't
want
know
to
if
show
you
it to
heard, Connor, there's a full breakdown video that Brendan helped write that Patrick did on the main channel, main Valuetainment channel.
And we have The Drink Tank, which I know a lot of you have been watching. That's our one-on-one spin-off series where we're at the bar right back there behind Rob over the shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely not an excuse to just drink at work, for sure. But if you look at this chart, George Soros pours money into the Open Society Foundation. Everybody knows that. Yep. Then Open Society puts a ton of money into the Tides Foundation, which is one of the primary recipients of its money. The other people who put money into that are groups like... the foundation started for Hewlett and Packard, Ford, Kellogg, Rockefeller. They all put money into this group.
Oscar Gates.
Yeah, it's the biggest names in American finance in the last 150 years. Mm-hmm. It's now all the foundations these legacy groups started that are being used to fund these activist groups.
Yeah.
This diagram specifically proves the role they all have in the campus protests right now, where the Tide Center kicks money to a group called Westpac. Westpac distributes it to a bunch of anti-Israel, pro-Palestine groups that are doing things on campuses. But they also used to manage money for BLM. They partnered in 2020, back when the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation did not have tax-exempt status. As soon as BLM got it back and were able to avoid paying taxes, they wanted their money back. And the verbal contract they had apparently entered into with Tides was, okay, you'll give us these $33 million back once we no longer have to, rely on your services. Well, they haven't given the money back. In fact, they've been distributing it to a bunch of other smaller groups, including local BLM chapters and splinter groups that the main Global Network Foundation swears off. These groups that are like, oh, we're not affiliated with them, we're our own thing. But because it's all confused under the BLM banner, Tides keeps giving them money. So they just filed a lawsuit last week demanding, that the money be returned, accusing them of committing fraud and all this stuff. And I have to sit back and think it's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, that's really what this is about. Who cares if BLM lost all its money?
We need to buy more mansions.
Yeah, we buy large mansions. That's what
it sounds like the grifters got grifted.
Who's better at fleecing the American people? It's basically an Olympics of that.
I would be okay. I don't disagree that there is a problem when it comes to race relations in this country, and I don't disagree that black people have had a tougher existence in this country than whites. Would you guys agree with that?
Well, yes, but if you know Thomas Sowell's stuff, like he talks about how you can believe that and also believe that BLM is objectively hurting this entire idea. Yeah. And also, like, the only way that you could improve them is improve their situation is through the market and through capitalism. And
so the best way to do that would be to reinvest that money into black people to put them in positions where they can make more money for themselves rather than taking that money and buying mansions.
It would be to teach the skills of entrepreneurship at a vast scale and help people start businesses. It wouldn't be to reallocate money or to build community programs or to lessen the amount of cops on the street or to give judges free reign to give, look the other way, empower district attorneys to look the other way. Like, none of that actually helps anybody. The only thing that could help anybody is teaching a man to fish. Teaching a man to fish, its knowledge is really the main thing that can
Think about what Black Lives Matter stood for. Back in the summer of love, they stood for violent riots that primarily destroyed the communities of the very people they claimed they were trying to defend. Every time a Black Lives Matter mob got anywhere close to a wealthy area, then the cops would swarm. Like in Chicago, when they got real close to Lori Lightfoot's favorite shopping center and restaurant district, cops showed up and stopped it. But if they want to burn down stores and businesses and homes in their own communities, everybody's fine. And that just keeps the problem going. So imagine what you're pouring money into. Groups that go out and incentivize, black community, burn down every place that might employ you around here. And then when all the stores leave and you're out important resources and all the grocery stores are closed because they've been looted so many times, just blame white people and give us more money.
But here's the important part that everybody's missing, though. So anytime we get too close to being connected and aligned on something, the people who control the world and have disproportionate influence, they rapidly get in there and try to divide us over something, because the only way they could implement the globalist system they want is if we're divided enough to distract us enough to weaken America to the degree to which they can do what they want to do with it.
Humberto, we got to wrap up. I'll give you the last word.
All right. This is disgusting. It's disgusting. I grew up, in an international school. There was, out of the 100 kids, there was 98 nationalities from 19 different cultures. I have friends from all walks of life, all colors. Rob knows we're like a very multi-diverse company. We have a jolly good time. We laugh at each other. We
have a jolly good time.
Yeah, we have a great
That's
time.
one way to put it.
And these people are making things worse. I think it's disgusting. I think the mentality of trying to help people, I'm not for it at all. I've seen extremely bright people from Nigeria, and I've seen dumbasses from Sweden, and everything in between. So, I think pointing this out is bringing us further away from what we need to be doing. That is the betterment of the human race and getting to Mars, because this country and this planet is done. And I think they got what they deserve. I don't celebrate it because I'm against it before they started getting money. So that's my take.
And that's the point. Let them fight, because they will inevitably eat their own, because these movements are not unified. It's a bunch of fragmented, selfish people who just want to divide. And when they can't divide everyone across the aisle, they will divide on their own side and tear each other apart.
Well, it's easy to manipulate angry people, though, and that's what they're doing with the Palestine protests, and that's what they do with the BLM stuff.
It's also easy to manipulate uneducated people.
Yes.
And you're starting to see the people in the protests who don't actually know why they're there protesting.
Yep.
And there have been multiple of them that have been caught on camera, like, oh, yeah, I don't know, from the river to the sea or something. I don't know. I just saw a bunch of people get So I think it's a bad combination when you have stupid, angry people.
Yep. Great combination if you're a globalist, though.
And as you can see from these numbers, there's a lot of money in it. And that's where the problem comes in.
And if you'd like to see exactly how much money is involved in this, go to VT.com and check out the article. The name of that article again, Connor?
I believe we have the graphic to throw up there if you want to go look for it. Black Lives Matter is filing a $33 million fraud lawsuit against the Soros-backed Tide Center.
Okay, and that's on VT.com, as well as many of the other articles that we covered today, including the Jeffrey Epstein Little Black Book. So if you'd like for more information, go to VT.com. If you are watching the podcast still, thank you for sticking around. I know you came for Vinny, and you got me. It's like, oh, I'm going to go have steak at the restaurant. And they're like, we're out of steak, but we can give you pizza. And I didn't come here to Morton's Steakhouse for pizza.
I love pizza.
Pizza is fantastic.
Oh,
yeah.
Anyone who says pizza is not good is an idiot.
Let's kiss. Oh, okay. All right. Listen, that's the end of today's podcast. If you have not done so yet, take a look, like, and subscribe. Thank you, Jeremy. 30,000 strong right here. Humberto's in the chat with you.
I love you, Chad. We've been here the whole time. They're hilarious. Shout out to all of you. You know who you are. Day ones. We're here.
Make sure that you, if you haven't yet, download the Connect app in your Apple or Tusk Play Store, and compete in the Connect League Championships. Thank you to all of our panelists who have been on today: Humberto, Connor, Brandon, Shane. We've got Kelly on the computer, Andres running sound, Jeremy in the back. Guys, thank you very much for joining us today. We will be back live Wednesday night, 2 nights from now. See you at 6 p.m. right here on the Unusual Suspects channel.